So, dearly beloved, it sort of feels a little strange to be doing this in this particular setting. I know that when I said I'd give you an update, I meant it. I didn't think we'd be quite in a spiritual setting, but here we are. So really today is about a follow-up from the previous talk that I gave in June. So I'm hoping that I won't keep you quite as long as I did last time, because we've only got about 6 months worth of things to update rather than the 3 years that we had previously. I think for me today is really about me giving you some feedback on the changes that we have brought in the senior school since September and how that looks and how that's going. To talk a little bit about our ongoing developments and where we are with them. To give you a bit of information on our future developments and our future plans and let you know what I can let you know, and then give you a time frame for other aspects. And then to touch on the political climate, because clearly there are things that are going on out in the broader world which may impact on us as an independent school. And it's worth me giving you what intelligence I have surrounding that at this stage. I thought it would be helpful for me to recap who we are at the school and who my team are. They aren't all here actually today. It's probably the first time ever that I have ever been able to, or I'm ever likely to be able to tell you that I have sent 2 of my senior teams to Siberia, but it is the truth. And Jane Evans and Steve Green are in Russia at the moment on a recruitment drive, so they aren't actually with us. But so that you know, Andy Free, who is standing at the back over there, is my Deputy Head Welfare. He's also the DSL for the college and responsibility for safeguarding. Steve Green, who, like I say, isn't here at the moment, is our Deputy Head who is in charge of teaching and learning and the quality of teaching across the whole college all the way through. We've got Tracy Coder-Bandaloo, who is somewhere, but I'm not quite, who's there at the back, and is our head of the junior school. I've got Andy Stevenson, who is here at the front, who is our bursar, and Jane, who is our Director of Outreach and Partnership and does a lot of the work on recruitment, but also in setting up partnerships, which are becoming increasingly important to us, particularly in light of the political climate, and I'll come back to that later. So I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of information about the changes that we undertook at the start of this year, and where we are on them. It's still early days, so much of what I say is this is where we are at the moment, this is our feeling of how things are going, but I will clearly keep referring back and coming back to that as the year goes on. So we made substantial changes this year, as most of you are aware. We changed entirely our pastoral system, we changed the structure of the school day, we changed our lesson length, we changed the way in which we deliver the curriculum, we changed a huge number of things. We changed our house system, a whole lot. So there's been a lot of change, and whilst I can report that those changes have been positive and have been embraced in a positive way, as is always the case when change happens. There are sticking points, there are things that are working better than others, and there are things that will need to be tweaked and adapted over the course of the year in order to make it work even better. But we are really pleased with the changes, and we are really pleased with the impact that those changes are having on our young people. I'm going to start by talking about the changes we've made to the pastoral system. So, as I think everyone is aware, we've moved to a year group system away from a house pastoral system, and so we have year leads who are responsible for the welfare, development and progress of the students in their care. What it gives us, and what we always wanted it to give us, was a single point of contact for you as parents to know who you need to go to if there is an issue, because it's very difficult if you're going to multiple different people for different aspects. It also gave us an opportunity of developing specialisms within the college, so we had people who would become experts in, what were the issues that your typical Year 7 student might encounter in the transition up to the senior school. And we've certainly found that that has helped us immensely in being in a position to get some real focus on the needs of each individual year group. And this group of people have really embraced everything that we asked them to do, and I am indebted really to their attitude, approach and enthusiasm for what they have been working on since September, and indeed before September. We now have a situation where these people are monitoring the uptake of co-curricular by students. They are making sure that they understand the potential of students in terms of their academic subjects, having a good baseline knowledge of what they are capable of achieving. They are tracking already across subjects, and they are looking for patterns, so they're identifying which students in their year group are performing particularly well, which ones are finding it more difficult, who's having trouble in which subject, are there any patterns associated with that. And that's an ongoing piece of work, but is already started, and already started quite comprehensively, so that I can say to any one of those year leads at the moment, tell me which 5 students in your year group are finding it the most difficult at the moment, and how are they getting on, and what are we doing about it, and they would actually be able to give me the answer to that. And that's a first for me, to be in that position where I've had that level of cohesion around pupil support and pupil learning. They are also ensuring that the environment is a warm, friendly, supportive place. And one of the things I really wanted to say at this stage was that these people were here throughout the summer to make sure that the year spaces for the students were a nice environment to be in. So our estates team did an amazing job on making sure that the work structurally was done in order to get it right and get a blank canvas. But in the weeks running up to us starting, these people were in sorting out soft furnishings, they were in putting up pictures on walls, they were in making the place as homely as possible. Some of our students know that, some of them probably don't. The reality is that they have worked in a way that they didn't need to. They did it because they wanted to, and because they believe in our students and wanted to support them, and to make the place as positive as they possibly can be. So we are really pleased with that change. We think that it is going to pay dividends. We're in the early stages of it, but we are already seeing improved levels of supervision in those spaces, improved levels of monitoring, improved levels of understanding of what's going on. We're already seeing better levels of support. We're already seeing better interventions taking place, and we're really at the start of the process, so that should only get better as those people get more used to the students who are in their care. So please, if you do have an issue, please contact them, because that's what they're there for. They would want to know so that they can do something about it, and that is very much the approach of that team. We're also finding some real advantages to the way in which we've organised our spaces. So our spaces are organised so that we have a situation where boys and girls are able to have some sociability together. So we've got in the Year 7 space, it is just co-educational. In the 8s, 9s, 10s and 11s, we've got a boys space, a girls space and a co-ed space. And whilst we have some students who choose to stay in the single-sex areas and be with boys and or girls of their own gender, we have a huge number who will choose to spend time in the mixed spaces, and indeed we have some who only spend time in the mixed spaces. So we've got sort of a combination of all of those things going on, which we like, and we like the fact that that becomes possible. So we are seeing some really positive benefits from that, and the feedback that we are getting is that it is working well and is something that is being enjoyed. We also changed our house structure, so we now have houses, but the houses are really only for competition purposes. And we deliberately wanted these to be run by sixth formers to provide a leadership opportunity for those students. We have so far had 2 successful and significant events. The first was the house singing competition, which we held in September, and then in October we had the first of our house matches. And I would really like to thank all of you who came along to those, because it was a really great day. It was lovely for the first time to be in a situation where we had parents at those matches, and indeed where we have other students at them, because previously they'd been in PE lessons, and therefore nobody else but the year group involved had actually seen anything of them, whereas this time we had the option and the opportunity for all of our students to be there, for them to support each other in their houses, and for their parents to come along as well. And whilst I know that some of them didn't want you there, we were really pleased to see you and would welcome you all to come at the next set, which will be in the spring term, because it's something that we really want to encourage and for us all to be part of. As well as those two events, we have also had a situation where every time our students get positive points on class charts, so the green points, they feed into the house system. So every single thing that somebody does, however small it may be, in whatever context it may be, counts towards their house, and that is having a really positive impact, I think, on a huge number of things. And so that I'm going to talk a little bit more about class charts later, but I thought you might be interested in our current standings, or our standings at the start of this half term, if any of you actually know which houses your children are in. So I'm going to go in backwards order. French are in 4th place at the moment on 2,253 points, and the vast majority of those points, a huge number of them, comes from what's going on every day from students' involvement. Barnacotta in 3rd at 2,429, Woolmer in 2nd at 2,510, and Ray at the moment are edging in the lead at 2,850. And so one of the things that we did was at the beginning of this half term, I said to everybody, these are the scores, but this is early days. We will have an update every half term. We'll look at where we're going, and I even reserved the right to do a Dumbledore at the end and award some last minute points, just to see how that messes up the process. We'll see. It's a really, really great leadership opportunity for our sixth formers, and they've really, really stepped up into that role. We were so impressed with the way in which they approached the house singing competition, which was fantastic from our perspective, because it was the first time that became a genuine student-led activity. We took a real hands-off approach to it. Some of us found that very difficult. There were members of teaching staff who were literally sitting there supervising, sitting on their hands, trying not to get involved, not to try and interfere, allowing the sixth formers to take the initiative on that. But they did, and in the course of a day, they went from, just having learnt the words through to being able to perform and to do that very successfully. Schools always aim to have these moments where they have student-led events, and very rarely is it achieved because teachers aren't good at letting go, and because students sometimes find it difficult to step up. We saw it happen, and it was a really, truly amazing experience. And the great thing about that is that all of those students who are in the younger year groups will look up to that, and we'll see that moment, and we'll see that opportunity, and we'll imagine when they can do it and when they can have that chance, and that will be something for them to strive for. And we've talked in this school a lot about positive role models and the desire to have really good role models in our student body, and we now really do have that, and we have those opportunities, and they have been absolutely fantastic with that. They run the house meetings themselves, they run the assemblies associated with the houses themselves, they ran the house singing. It is a real development within the school, and something that we are really pleased with. So we've also changed our provision both within the curriculum and the co-curricular, and this again has been a sea change. It was all based around this change to the school day and what that's looked like and how that's helped us. We believed very strongly that we wanted to change this system because we wanted to remove co-curricular from lunch times, to have 2 co-curricular slots at the end of the school day, to disentangle it all from lunch and all the things that go along with that. We wanted to reduce the amount of time at lunchtime because we believed that that was generating problems, because we felt that there were certainly elements of our student community, particularly amongst the boys, who found it difficult to fill that time when it was too big, and therefore found themselves getting into scrapes at that point. It was a difficult time to manage, so we wanted to make those changes. We also wanted to move to 1 hour lessons because we believe strongly that that would give us a better length of time in order to get really, really good quality teaching taking place, something that is very difficult in short periods of time, short lessons. So it's an early start, and I think there are those amongst us who find it quite tough to be starting lessons at 8:30, if I'm entirely honest. But what it does mean is we have a crisp start to the day. We don't have a lot of hanging around and wasted time. What used to happen is that our students would get here at 8:15 or before, and they would be hanging around. They might have an assembly, but no lessons would start until 9 o'clock, and they were sort of all a bit sleepy. And we had lots of sort of sitting around from lots of people. And we don't have any sitting around now because they're straight into the lessons, straight into registration, and we're off. And so the days feel much more purposeful than they have done in the past, and much more productive. And actually I think we are finding that we're getting through a lot more, we're covering a lot more material, people are in the right headspace throughout the entirety of the day. We've seen some interesting responses to this because we have the situation now where chapel is in the middle of the day. It's at 2 o'clock when we have it, and the quality of singing has gone up exponentially. And I think it's because people are actually awake by then. I think that's the reason that by the time we get to that point, they've woken up, and so we're seeing a great improvement in the quality of teaching. It allows us to more efficiently use our time, and it has allowed us to really think about how we put things together. So I wanted to give you a bit more information really about our lesson structure, our classroom structure, and what that looks like. So in the classroom, our lessons have changed. We now operate in across the school, both in the juniors and the seniors, a structure where we have a 4-part lesson. So the first 10 minutes are a previous learning phase. That's what we look at. We try to embed it in what we've done previously. And where possible, we have something called a low stakes quiz, and you'll probably find that your children will talk about those, where we have in that first 10 minutes 10 questions where they have to recall things that they've done in previous lessons, and we link it through. And at the moment that's very much linked to what we've done in the last few weeks, but as we get better at this and as we move this on, we'll start to link that to things that happened last year or things that happened in a previous topic, or however that might look, so that they are constantly reinforcing what they know. And these are low stakes because they don't matter. They're not about you've got to work really, really hard and you've got to do really well and it's a test. It's very much about recall and making sure that's in the forefront of their mind. So they're not stressful, they're just about making sure that everybody is on top of their work. We then have the next 40 minutes, which are sort of divided into 2 phases, sometimes in blocks and sometimes mixed up, where we have the instructional phase, which is the bit where we actually make sure they are taught something new, and then the deliberate practice phase, where they have an opportunity to practice that and reinforce it. And you should see evidence of that in the work that you're seeing come home. You should see evidence of that in the conversations that you have, and whether that is, you know, in some subjects they're taught a topic or just given a 5-minute instructional period and then asked to go and do something for 5 minutes and then you keep coming back, or whether that's 20 minutes of intense teaching, very focused, making sure that they know something completely new, and then practice some questions like might happen in a subject like maths. Doesn't really matter, but what matters is that they are being taught and they are having an opportunity to practice, and for it to be modelled what good looks like, what excellent looks like. You know, we shouldn't be playing a guessing game with our young people. They shouldn't have to work out what we think is good. We should tell them what's good. So this is what I want, this is what excellent looks like, now have a go at it, can you produce something excellent for me? And then the final phase, the last 10 minutes, is sort of a consolidation period where we are able to review their learning, make sure we know that they have understood, make sure that we are able to plan a good lesson for the next time, so that all of our time is effective and not wasted. And you should be able to talk to your children, and they should be able to tell you about these phases. Now, they might not be able to tell you about them in those terms, but you should be able to recognise that that's happening. And if you can't recognise that that's happening, then in that place it's not happening in the way it should, and we need to look at that. And one of the things that I've said to you before is that your feedback is really important. You telling us what the experience is like matters. Us knowing what that looks like matters, because that's the way that we can gauge whether the things that we want to happen are happening. We are doing things ourselves. We're going into lessons. I've been into lessons. Steve Green, our Deputy Head Teaching and Learning, has been into lessons. We've had 2 governors go into lessons to look for those moments, to see what they can find, to make sure it's happening. But of course, we need to know it's happening all the time, and that those improvements and that structure is paying dividends, which we know that it will. So outside the classroom, the new structure means that we have now got a very, very comprehensive co-curricular programme, which our young people are able to select what they want to do. And I just wanted to make a point at the moment of mentioning Mrs. Pamela Pawley, who is our assistant head in charge of the curriculum. She has scheduled and timetabled this, and she has done it not only for the start of September but then again for the start of November. It is an ongoing thing. We ask our students to choose what they'd like to do. She then tries to rewrite the timetable to make sure it's possible. We're trying to be as responsive and reactive as we possibly can. We're trying to make sure our students do as many different things as they possibly can and work out what they like, and then have opportunities to look at it. They are expected to do something cerebral each week. They are expected to do something creative each week. They are expected to do something physical each week. And whilst we know that there are some people who are not quite fulfilling that, and we're working with them to make sure that they do, the point is, we know that there are some who are not quite fulfilling that, and we're working with them to make sure they do. And in the past, we haven't necessarily known at all what they were doing. So now we've got a much better view of it. Anyone who really embraces that has multiples of opportunities to do all sorts of different things. And I am now, on a daily basis almost, getting people, even people from outside school, coming in and saying, can we help with this? So I had 2 people last week come to see me. One who was talking to me about helping with running astronomy and how we make that happen, and another one who was asking me, could they help us set up an archaeology club? All of those are fantastic. The more things like that we can do, the better. And if you've got any suggestions or any expertise to offer, we're always interested in listening to what those things might be, because opportunities are everything, and we want to give our young people as many of those as we can. I wanted to talk a little bit, like I say, about the teaching and learning side of things. We've talked about our structure in terms of our lessons, but we've also got considerable work that we're doing generally on teaching and learning, and the quality of teaching and learning, and monitoring the quality. We've got a real increased focus on on quality of teaching and learning, looking for evidence that learning is taking place and good quality learning is taking place. We are looking for our students to make excellent progress for themselves, and for us to be able to see how that looks. We are identifying those teachers who are demonstrating that they are excellent themselves in what they do, and using them to train those who find particular areas difficult. And we do have some professional improvement plans in place to support teachers when they find things difficult, and to make sure that we are able to upskill everybody to become absolutely fantastic. We have good teachers here, we have some great teachers here, and we want to make sure that all of our teachers are able to provide that same level of excellence. As I said to you last time, we should not have a situation ever where the teacher you get in a particular subject determines how successful you are. You should have the same opportunities no matter who teaches you, and that's what we are working towards. So it is a really big focus. We're doing a lot of work on it at the moment. We're going into lessons a lot, we're seeing what's happening, and we're listening to feedback. And whenever we have feedback, we are acting on it straight away to try and ensure that we have put the support in place to ensure that all of our teachers in all of our subjects are producing excellent teaching and excellent learning opportunities. We have been doing quite a lot of work on behaviour for learning, and that's really a lot to do with what Class Charts is about. So you will have seen this, I hope. We are putting the homework on there. That's now sort of a regular part of what we do, so everybody knows what that looks like. But we're also now allowing you to see and publishing openly how we are awarding our awards. So we have green points which are for positives and red which are for negatives. We have assigned those to different criteria, so you can look and you can see if your son or daughter gets a positive, you can see what it's for. If they get a negative, you can see what it's for. We're hoping that enables you to have conversations if you wish to have them. It certainly keeps you informed and makes sure that you know where we are. We don't really expect you to do anything with it other than to know about it. You know, we are dealing with those things ourselves. But what we are seeing is that it does matter. So I had a Year 9 boy who came to see me on Friday, and he was quite upset. And he was quite upset because he had been awarded 4 red points, and he wanted to apologise to me. I didn't award them to him, one of his teachers did. He came to see me because he wanted to apologise to me for the fact that he had gained these 4 red points, and he wanted to talk me through what had happened and discuss with me how he might not get into that situation again. And so that has been, you know, a real eye-opener to us, I think. In terms of the house points and the contribution to the house points, the negatives don't contribute at all, it's only the positives. And we are working with our teachers to make sure that the discussions happen around those points, so that if a student gets any negatives, they can have the discussion about what it means and what it's for. What I would say is, when you look at the numbers that have been awarded, we have had masses. So before October half term, I think we'd had in the region of 10,000 green positives and less than 1,000 negatives. So it gives you a sense of the balance. The balance is very, very much on the positives, but where they happen, they happen. And we are seeing extremely good behaviour, extremely focused learning taking place in our lessons, and students who are engaged and are aware of how this all fits together. We're still working on our feedback, and I told you a little bit about this last time. So you should still see the green and purple pen thing happening. So you should see green pen being used for anything which is the teacher marking it, and purple pen as the response. You should see more purple than green, really, because the idea is that if we are giving feedback, it needs to be responded to. If it's not being acted upon, then it's probably not even being read. And if it's not being read, then it isn't having any impact. So this is about ensuring that happens, and you'll see that if you look at the books. You should see that, and you should see that balance. And again, that's important that that's happening, because that's something that we are looking at across the whole college. The junior school have done the same thing for a long period of time, and the senior school are developing the same systems and finding them to be very successful. I just wanted to touch on exam results, because it's something that obviously is often at the front of our minds, but we were really pleased with the exam results this year. We were pleased with both at A-level and GCSE with the progress that our students were making, and at A-level with the universities that we were able to go on to. But one of the recent pieces of analysis that we have had, which is something which I felt was probably worth sharing with you, is that we have found that nationally, if we have students who come to us and stay with us to the end of their A-level studies, then their progress is in the top 15% of schools in the country. So that's a really positive thing. So if you come here and you stay here to the end of your A-levels, then that will have a positive benefit on your outcomes, and that's something that we will continue to strive to improve. You know, top 15% is okay, top 10 would be better. Tom 5 will be better still, and that's what we would wish to be able to do. This is not about raw results, this is about students making good progress for themselves. Will they do better here with us than they would if they went elsewhere? And that is our ambition. So I now wanted to talk to you a little bit about the ongoing developments and where we currently sit, so that you have a little bit more information, and then I'll move on to future developments. I talked about financial security a little bit last time, well, probably more than a little bit actually, and I know I told you that in 2016 when I took over, we were operating at a 5% deficit. And I told you that by the end of last academic year we would have made our target in terms of a surplus, and in future years we would make a 5% surplus, which is what we want to achieve and what is required of us by MIS, the group that we are part of. And I can confirm that at the end of last academic year, 2019, we achieved our budgeted surplus, and that we are now on track to make the 5% surplus for this year and future years. And it's important that I also say at this point that that's including in that costs that we know might be coming our way at some point, so that's budgeted into the future. So for example, the cost of the increased payments on the teachers' pension scheme are included in that 5% surplus, and other issues like the loss of business rate relief is also included in our calculations. So we are future-proofing as we go through this, and we're doing that for lots of reasons. But part of it is because we believe very strongly, and we know that this is not the case for all schools, but we believe very strongly that we need to ensure that we can recruit and retain the very, very best possible teachers. And we need to make sure that we have systems in place to make that possible. And cutting corners on that is not something that we are willing to do. I talked to you last time about the restructuring within the academic staff and the fact that that has meant that there were some redundancies last year as a result of that. We're now going through a similar restructuring programme across the support staff to make sure that we are cost efficient, that we are effective, that we have the right systems in place, that we manage those in the right way. We started off with our admin support. That restructure has been completed now. We've now moved into other areas. But so that you have some idea of what we've done and why we've done it, Pam Chapman remains my PA. Judith Poole remains the academic administrator, and Sally Murray remains the pastoral and compliance administrator, as they have always been. We are in the process of advertising for a co-curricular administrator, because now we do so much more co-curricular. We now need somebody to make sure it's administered properly. And I really need to thank Judith Poole, who's done that on top of the academic work at great sacrifice to her own time. We are now getting someone else in place who will make sure that that is properly looked after. Ken Bird is now our Director of Communications and is working with me on our communication strategy, and that's something that we are looking at more sort of holistically. And we've appointed Rebecca Mockridge, who was down in the Sixth Form Centre. She has now taken the position of Customer Services Administrator, and her role is to look after you and to make sure that we have a good dialogue in place. So that's what we have been working towards. Communications is something that we talked about last time, and is something that we have identified as an area that we need to work on and develop. And after our the last time we met, it became really clear to us that we had a situation where some of the problems with our communication were made worse by the fact that our internal management information system was very, very ineffective, and it meant that we had information in multiple places. It was difficult to extract information. It was difficult to make sure that everything worked in the right way. So we made the decision that we would introduce a new system, which is a much easier interface, much easier for our staff to work with, which would enable us to tidy up all of our systems and make sure we've got all of our information in one place, and therefore it's going to be easier for us to communicate out externally if we've got that sorted out. And that will be starting in January. and we are working at the moment, and we've got some training coming up, which is for the administrative staff and then the academic staff over the next few weeks in order to get them ready for that change in January. You won't see any significant change in the first instance to that because we are phasing it in. So it's coming in January, but it's not coming in terms of reporting until September. But what it will enable us to do is to clean up our information, make sure we've got everything in one central place, make sure that our systems work, and then we will be able to work much more effectively on the way that we communicate externally. I wanted to give a very big thank you to those of you in the senior school who have responded to the questionnaire that we put out on communications. I've got quite a lot of information from here, but it gives us some really key points to look at because it has told us that you prefer to get information by email. It has told us that you would ideally like it to be weekly. It has told us that you like the sports portal so long as it's kept up to date and is right. And it's told us that you are really, really not happy with the way in which we organise music lessons and the way in which we communicate what's going on with those. And therefore, we now know some really key areas that we need to look at putting a strategy and a plan in place for, which we can now do moving forward. For those of you in the junior school who have not received that survey, we had identified that we had a bigger problem in the senior school than in the junior school, and therefore we focused on the things relative to the senior school first, and we'll come back and look at anything with the junior school later. You did get a survey earlier on in the year which included some areas on communication which didn't come out as a problem for the junior school, so we've very much focused our minds in terms of the seniors. So what you will start to see is us producing the information that you've asked for in the way that you've asked for it, and for us not to give it to you in the ways that you don't want it. We've found out some interesting points, which is you really like the wyvern when you receive it, but in 35% of the cases it hasn't arrived, so it's either in a locker at school, or it's stuck somewhere underneath a bench, or it's wherever it is. So we need to look a little bit about how that happens and what that looks like. So, what are our next steps? Well, we've got a lot of next steps, and we've got a lot of important things that are coming up. I am going to talk a little bit, first of all, about the estate development. I just wanted to say, really, that these are some of the images that have come from the areas that we worked on over the summer. So the day spaces, but also the dining pavilion. And I wanted just at this point to thank two people particularly. Obviously Debs Cossey and the estates team, who worked amazingly well to get all of this done over the summer and did a fantastic job for us. But if you look at the artwork in the dining pavilion, for anyone who doesn't know, the artwork was done by two of our art teachers who worked on ensuring that that was a really beautiful space. So Bex Cade and Laura Burgoyne produced all of the artwork that's in the dining pavilion. They are both immensely talented, and we were extremely fortunate for them to do pieces of work for us that have made such a difference to that space. So I just wanted to thank them. But we've got some lovely spaces that we've been working on. We've got a lot that is going to be happening moving forward. I'm going to give you a little bit of information now, but I can't give you all of it at this stage. So we've, as you know, been looking at selling the chaplain's house so that we can shore up that area and make it secure. That sale is proceeding, so hopefully that will be something that will be completed very soon. We are looking at two sites next to it which have got a derelict building on it at the moment, which need tidying up, which can be used for development of other housing. So that's been looked at, and again that can shore up that side and make sure that it is safe and secure from a safeguarding perspective. We talked last time about how it is our intention to bring all the boarding onto the main school site and to close the Channon boarding house in August, the end of August next academic year. And the reasons for that is because it's about a mile journey, it's in the dark, our boarders have to walk there at night in high-vis jackets, and for me that is a risk that I don't want take. And we want them to be on site in the school environment. We have not yet made a decision as to what to do with that site yet, and we are in negotiations at the moment to see whether we can use it for something else and what that something else might be. But we don't want our students to have to go there on a daily basis because of the safety associated with it. We are in the process of putting a plan together for moving all of that boarding that happens in Channon into the main school site. We've got a lot of space within the school that is hidden space that you won't be aware of, that I am now becoming increasingly aware of as we wander around different spaces. We have a proposal in place which will be about the development of the whole site with the boarding as part of that, which we are taking to our full board governors meeting at the end of this month. And so I would anticipate that in the spring term I will be in the position to tell you what that's going to look like, and to hold another one of these meetings where I can specifically give you information on the site development over the coming 12 months and what that actually looks like moving forward. We have a focus now on our IT and our IT infrastructure. It is my wish and my desire to have a situation where we embed technology into our teaching and learning. It has been a view of mine for some considerable time. Whilst as teachers we may not use technology that much ourselves, our young people do. It is part of the way they learn, it is part of the way they work, and we want to be in a situation where we can do that in the right way and we can adopt that in the right way. So we need to do some work on the infrastructure and on upskilling many of us, me included, in the use of technologies in order to ensure that we are always at least one step ahead of our students, which can be tricky when it comes to technology, and to make sure that we are in a place to use it productively and progressively. So there's a lot going on, but I will come back to that, if you would allow me, in spring, when I've got a detailed plan which has been approved by the governors and which we can move forward with. So that leads me to really the last thing that I wanted just to cover, because you, like I am sure, are aware that the Labour Party in their last conference talked about the abolition of our sorts of schools under the hashtag Abolish Eton. And there are a few elements of this that I just wanted to unpick. I think it's important that we all accept and acknowledge the fact that actually it is very, very unlikely to happen for a variety of reasons. And that is not about who will get into power in the general election at all. It is to do with the realities of the situation. Any removal of the right to a private education contravenes human rights legislation which was brought in the late 1940s in order to combat states having a monopoly on education for obvious reasons in 1947-48, why they were concerned about that. So it is in direct contravention of the human rights legislation. So whilst it is a threat and is something that is talked about, I think it is something that is very, very unlikely to ever get past discussion point. And indeed, I think when the Labour Party manifesto comes out on Thursday, which I think is when it's due, it probably will not sit in there, because I think that they realise that it is potentially a step too far. I think it's important to note that we anticipate that business rate relief will be removed from independent schools, but we have anticipated that for some time, and as I say, it is actually in our financial planning that we are expecting that to happen. We're expecting to have around about £200,000–300,000 additional bill to pay, and therefore when I talk to you about the 5% surplus, that includes that. We are expecting to have to pay that. So that is part of the planning. The VAT on school fees is an interesting one, because I think it's the way things could go. It could be a possibility. It may not be a possibility. We don't know what level it would be charged at, so it may not be charged at the top rate. We don't know how that would look if it was charged. We have looked at things, we've modelled it, we've looked at what the impact would be. Clearly, from our perspective, if we became an institution where VAT applied, then there would be ways in which we could claim that back. But that's the area where it's questionable, and we aren't sure yet what that looks like. But Andy is very aware of that and constantly thinking in terms of, how would we manage that and what would that actually look like. So that's one element. But I think the more important point is that for me, it displays that there is a general negativity to schools of our type in the general population. And whilst we understand what our schools are about, not everybody does. And that hashtag Abolish Eton is something that I found quite difficult, because if ever a school was 1,000,000 miles away from Eton, it's Queen's. Everything about us is different to Eton. Everything about us is different to the schools of that nature. We are not populated by the wealthy. We are not populated by families who are steeped in hundreds and hundreds of years of wealth. That isn't what we are. We are a community made up of young people from families who make very real sacrifices on a daily basis in order to make it possible for their children to experience our type of education. That's what we are. And I've invited everyone to come and visit our school. I've invited, all of the local politicians, all of the local councillors to come and see us, to come and see what we're like, to come and see our community, to see how not like Eton we actually are, to see how normal we are, to see how typical we are, to see how our families are, to see how our children are, to become aware that we are just a group of people who believe in the value of education and believe in the value of a broad, balanced curriculum, who believe that it should be about opening minds, and who believe that it's worth making sacrifices to make that happen. But I think we've got a job to do as a sector and as a school, and maybe as families, to open up what we are and to get across what we are, because people don't understand. Not all people understand. I think as a school we have things that we need to do. We offer means-tested bursaries. We offer a number of those, but we don't offer enough. So we have to find ways of generating income to enable us to do that better. We have to find ways of engaging with our local community better. We have to find ways of giving back better. And that's one of the things that we need to start looking at. So when I turn back to Jane Evans and what she's doing, one of the things that she's doing is looking for those opportunities, looking for those moments when we can interact with the local community, looking for those places where we can give something back, looking for those ways in which we can fundraise in order to support our foundation, to develop a bigger bursary pot. Because my ambition would be not only for us to be the best school that you could go to, and that you would do better here than you would anywhere else in the country. But my ambition is also to be means blind at the point of admission, so that we were in a position to take children irrespective of how much money their parents had, so that we were in a position to be able to open ourselves up to anyone who would benefit from us and anyone who would contribute to us. But we can only do that if we fundraise for bursaries, and we get that as a significant part of what we do. And whilst we should be doing that, and need to do that because of the current political climate, we should be doing that because we're a Methodist school anyway, and that's the principles on which we were founded. So anything any of you can do at any point to help us with that, whether it's getting the message out there, whether it's helping us to fundraise, whether it's getting engagement, whether it's just communicating that we are not somewhere which is the province of privilege, and getting the message out there that we have a significant number of young people in this school who wouldn't be here if they were not supported by means-tested support, including those who are on full bursaries. Then anything you can do would be appreciated and help, because I think long term all of us as independent schools are going to have to find our ways of doing that. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I'm not actually going to take questions today here because my voice is about to give out on me, but I am here to speak individually with anybody who would like to ask me any questions, ask anything that they want to know. And we will put on another one of these in the spring term, where I'll do a real focus on the estate plan and what that looks like and where we will go moving forward, for anyone who is interested in knowing about what that looks like. But thank you very much for coming tonight. It's very dark, it's very miserable, it's very cold, and we really do appreciate your engagement with us, so thank you.